I think AI tools and other tools can help stimulate creativity, but in the end, they're always very much grounded in what has happened before, what the model has been trained on. And I think humans do have a propensity to be able to think beyond and think differently. On the other hand, AI tools can help that happen more quickly. So as you rightly say, it's a partnership between the tool and the human.
RELX Group is a quietly powerful force in the world of information analytics and scientific discovery. With a presence across legal, medical, technical, and even events, the organization sits at a unique crossroads where data meets decision-making and where artificial intelligence is beginning to fundamentally reshape research and development. Today's guest is Stuart Whayman, President of Corporate Markets at Elsevier, a part of RELX Group. An Oxbridge maths graduate, Stuart has spent much of his career helping to steer the company through its transformation from a print-heavy publisher into a data-rich, AI-led business powered by some of the most advanced research institutions and enterprises on the planet. We discuss Stuart's personal journey, the lessons he's carried forward from academia into the consultancy world and then into industry, and how AI is quietly but profoundly shifting the way R&D is carried out, particularly in the domains of pharmaceuticals, scientific discovery and beyond. We also explore how RELX Group, which includes LexisNexis, builds trust into its AI products, tackling thorny issues like hallucination, bias, and also model drift. Challenges that many businesses are only just beginning to grapple with. This conversation is an illuminating look inside a company that often operates behind the scenes, but whose tools and data shape critical decisions around the world. This is Stuart Whayman. So Stuart, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. I've been really excited to talk to you. I know RELX, read Elsevier reasonably well as an organization. Very exciting time for you guys. So much to dip into. But let's start with the eternal opening question on the Tech Leaders podcast. What does good leadership mean to you, Stuart?
Good leadership. I mean, there's a lot of different qualities that come into it. Clarity, vision, good judgment, all of those pieces. But I think the thing that is most important for me, and the thing I've experienced from great leaders I've worked for, but that I've always tried to sort of live out in some respect, is some level of what I call servant leadership. So recognizing that in the end, as a leader, you're serving customers and you're serving teams and a wider organization. Early on in my career as a manager, you sort of think when you go into management, you become the boss, right? And people are going to do what you say. But that's actually not what it's all about. And I remember going on a training course quite early on as a sort of a young manager. And I think we saw a video of a squadron leader of the Red Arrows. He's got a team of people who flying these amazing planes at high speed, incredibly dangerous, but very, very talented. And I was very struck by the fact that as a squadron leader, you're thinking, well, this is he's the big dog, right? He's the one. And actually, he basically put himself down and said, no, actually, what I'm the enabler. I'm the one who removes all the barriers so that my talented team can be the best that they can be. And I think as a leader, in the end, that's what you want out of your organization, to make them be the best that they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've nailed it. That's exactly what leadership is, isn't it? It's getting the best out of others, obviously, the cliche, but ultimately that's a lot easier said than done. Red Arrows is a great example. Do you know what? It's funny you should say that, Stuart. I watched them on the weekend. It was the Wales Air Show in Swansea. We went down and watched them on the beach. And I'm just always in awe of them. It's just, they never fail to impress. I've probably seen them 50 times and it just never gets boring. It's just phenomenal. But that's certainly an environment where good leadership is necessary, isn't it? No, that's a really good answer. So look, a couple of the listeners may be aware of Reed Elsevier, but may not be aware of yourself. So could you maybe give us a little bit of an overview of your backstory, maybe starting with why you chose to pursue the career path that you did and how that sort of played out? So an overview of sort of education days up to joining Reed Elsevier.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. So I'm a maths graduate in terms of sort of academic background. Probably when I was starting out way back when, I didn't imagine that I'd be in the environment and the world that I am in now. When I was really young, I thought I might like to be a sports journalist. That was my dream job. I love sports and I love talking. And I thought that would be a great thing to do, paid to watch sport and all of that stuff. And then I realized that through education, I was probably better with numbers than I was with words. So I ended up studying maths. And then as I was sort of developing and thinking, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I was also thinking, the thing that kept coming back was working in business. And there were a couple of things that sort of took me down that route. One was my dad. So my dad was a leader of a local regional building society. And I was always really struck by the way he always believed that there was a really positive impact that his organization could have on the local community and on people. And that sort of vision for the positive impact that an organization can have. And I was quite struck by that. And I was also struck as a teenager there was a TV series, I don't know if you remember it, a guy called John Harvey Jones. So he's the old chairman of ICI, and he had a TV show, end of 80s, beginning of 90s, called Troubleshooter. And he went into lots of different businesses, looking at how they were doing. And obviously they were probably underperforming businesses, and he'd go in no nonsense and tell them what they needed to do. But what I was always struck with, my takeaway, and I'm sure there were lots of other messages from the show, but my biggest takeaway was always, are you really serving your customers? Are you really where the market should be? Actually, if you do, you can have a real impact. And so this idea of having an impact, doing something good that customers really want is something I thought, well, that's something I'd like to be involved in some shape or form. So being numerate and having that kind of motivation, I went into training with KPMG to get into accounting, just because I thought, well, that might be a nice route into business. So I did training with KPMG out in the regions, saw lots of little different businesses, pig farms, breweries, you name it. And at the end of my training, I was very focused on how do I make sure that I see something different to what I've just trained in. So these are small businesses, but I hadn't seen a large multinational global, and I wanted to get into industry, into business. So I started looking at different businesses in different industries to see what might be interesting. And to be perfectly honest, the first organization that offered for me was Reed Elsevier as it was then, RELX Group as it is today. And it was very interesting. I joined in the financial planning and analysis team just as an analyst. I was struck by the information focus. Information is something that I have an affinity for. I like books, I like data, I like information. And so there was something there that I liked. But I joined and I thought, well, I'll be there 3 years and then I'll do something else and I'll explore something else. And 27 years later, here I am. So yeah, I probably should go on to the rest of the journey, but that's probably where it all started out.
That's fascinating. Can I rewind you back a little bit? Obviously, I know you studied maths at Oxford University. Can you talk us through, obviously, a very prestigious course in a very prestigious institution? What lessons did you learn from studying at Oxford, do you think? Or what value did you take from that experience, which has stood you in good stead through your career?
It's definitely not the maths. I had the depressing moment of finding my books in my parents' attic a few years ago, not being able to understand a word that I'd written with my own handwriting. I mean, the maths was interesting, but it was pure mathematics largely. And I'm quite an applied and practical person. I did it because it was a great course to do. And it was great to stretch the brain. My biggest takeaway, I think, was having confidence to tackle hard problems, to apply myself to hard problems, and to have different strategies for solving them in different creative ways. I came from a state school. I didn't come from a private background. And so going to Oxford, I think, gave me quite a bit of confidence that I could, play at that stage, if that makes sense. But it also taught me that lesson. And I love solving problems now. And it gave me that confidence to do that.
So do you think being amongst very mathematical peers, top of the food chain in terms of the British mathematical community, if you like, obviously the maths course in Oxford is obviously renowned. Are you saying that being in that presence, having those peers, that's what give you more of a determination to solve complex problems? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's a bit of that. I mean, I think I learned a lot from other people. I think you also learn a lot of humility and learning from people who've got brains that are 10 times the size of your own is one of the things that you learn very quickly, which is there are problems you can't solve, but there are people who can solve it and you can work with them on those difficult problems. So I think learning to work with others is one of the lessons. Bit of confidence of being able to stretch your brain to apply yourself to those difficult things. Those would be the key lessons.
Yeah, sure. So you're obviously a numbers guy then, Stuart. Do you have that mentality these days as well? There's obviously, you said information, you're interested in information. I'm assuming you're interested in data. What can you talk me through how that's manifested through your career and how that's benefited you being a numbers guy in a business leadership role?
Yeah, so I think from a numbers perspective, numbers are something that interests me. I feel very, very at home looking at numbers. I think probably what stood me in good stead is the ability to quickly spot patterns in numbers. So you can quickly analyze and digest and be able to make good judgments around them. But I like to think that I'm more than numbers. I mean, I do enjoy words. Back to where I started, I wanted to be a sports journalist. I actually enjoy reading an awful lot. And I actually think one of the things that I like to try and do is be quite broad in both my interests and my approaches to different problems and with my teams and with the business. So numbers are definitely, there's an analytical core to me probably, but I'd like to think to continue to learn and teach myself to go beyond that. Maybe should I sort of take a little bit the journey of having joined RELX as sort of a couple of the steps along the route after that?
Well, yeah, I did. That was my next question. I was wondering, just to maybe reframe that a little bit, Stuart, if you could tell me about the type of organization you joined, okay, and compared to the organization you are today.
That's a fascinating question. Back then, I would say it was relatively, well, at the time, it was a dual listed organization, which had its own challenges from a management structure perspective. Read Elsevier as it was dual listed UK, Netherlands with two boards. As an organization, it was incredibly print heavy from a product perspective. So when I joined back in 1998, digital meant CD-ROM to a certain extent, which is quite scary.
Yeah, I remember that.
And of course, the internet was out, but actually making money from the internet was still another stage away. And there's been just so much change in the information sector since then that it's been fascinating journey to be on. So we obviously did the jump from print to online through Web 2.0 to data and analytics to tools. And now, of course, we've got generative AI. And the changes that come from that are quite profound. They happen over a period of time. They don't happen immediately overnight, but over time, as an organization, you become more technology focused. You become and have to be more agile and speed focused. And frankly, more customer focused as well, as the customer's needs are changing more quickly over time as well. So there's a lot of things that have changed from something that was probably relatively slow moving and quite staid back in the late 90s to something that is really quite innovative and agile environment today.
So when you joined, it was still in the stage that there was remnants of the old print world there then?
More than remnants.
That was inherently still a hardware business then, essentially then, yeah? And you've seen that digital transformation and that shift over to software. Can you talk us through that journey? How painful or how successful has that journey been for the organisation, Stuart?
There's been lots of different stages of it. I think it's always been a focus on not just chasing the new technology, but working out what can it do for our customers? How does it actually change the value proposition for our customers? And how do we use technology to improve the outcome for our customers? So actually, in some respects, the change has been relatively gradual over that 27 years. There have not been many, if I can call it, real big bumps in the road. It's been sort of change. It's been a step change, a step here, a step there, an acquisition here, a new product there, but keeping with the curve and sometimes ahead of the curve to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the customer. So hasn't necessarily always required big, systematic, if I can call it, restructuring and complete pivots. Probably the one The one piece that I was involved with where there was more fundamental change, I was at Reed Business Information back in the late 2000s. So late 2000s, of course, synonymous with the sort of financial crash. And Reed Business Information at the time was a business that it had a mix of products that were serving vertical B2B markets with information products. But those products included print magazines, so things like Computer Weekly, Farmers Weekly, but they also had data products. We had data products in chemistry, in banking, in other places. And actually, we were put up for sale by Reed Elsevier, as it was then in 2008, because it was a business that probably underperformed, but it was also very heavy in terms of advertising revenue. And RELX recognized that actually, if you were really providing value and information to the customers, they're going to be willing to pay you for that content. It's not going to be sponsored by advertising. And of course, it's going to be much more reliable and recurring in that sense. And so we were put up for sale as a business that was much more heavily advertising driven. And I lived through that process. I was very involved in it. And actually, it was a failed process. So I spent an entire year working on a sale process. It was probably a year I put in more hours than any other year. And I got to the end of the year and the plug was pulled on the disposal because the financial crash had happened. Our advertising revenue was going down. There probably wasn't the money in the market for a deal like this. And there we were, having worked incredibly hard to be disposed of, now part of an organization that wasn't sure if it really wanted us or not. And then the next few years was all about transforming ourselves more organically. And it was quite a formative time for me in lots of different ways. I ended up being promoted to the global CFO role after a couple of management change rounds in 2010. And we then went on a process with the chief executive of actually selling off those advertising magazines and really investing in the data services and making acquisitions in that space. And that was slightly more transformative, probably not at a RELX level, but certainly at a business level. It was a much more active step change in the business model and the focus on technology and data.
Okay, so I want to move it on then, because I'm just keen to talk about the evolution of data. So how have you seen the role of data sort of evolve as like a byproduct of operations to a strategic asset in enterprise decision making? Do you know what I mean? Can you talk us through the evolution of data becoming information for companies to base decisions on?
Yeah, so data is incredibly valuable to organizations. I think that almost goes without saying today. And it's almost amazing to think how organizations were run if you go back 20, 30 years and how little late data was available or how late that data was available. And now we take it for granted that data is available immediately. We can have data on customers, on products, on ecosystems that help us to be able to make good decisions. And so we started out as an information business. So at Elsevier, our heritage 140 years ago and since has been around peer-reviewed scientific content. But over the years, we've added data sets on top of that enable our users and our customers to be able to make better decisions. So it's not just about reading information and being able to take information and then make judgments around that. It's giving them data points that actually enable them to put measures on that and make sure much harder objective decision making.
In terms of obviously the companies that generate data, but they don't extract meaningful, actionable information from it. Do you know what I mean? And the ones who do, what kind of separates companies who basically act upon the data and companies who don't? Is it because of technology, Stuart? Is it because of just decision making at a business level? What advice do you typically give to companies to basically store and basically make data core to what the decisions they're making at board level? Is it a technology conversation generally you're having, or is it more of a cultural thing?
I think it's a bit of both. So people's ability to get to important information, certainly their own information, can sometimes be limited by technology and their own data flows. But of course, then there are providers like ourselves who can provide data sort of off the shelf, if you will. And then it is sometimes about helping customers to understand the value of that actually a small investment in a data or information tool can help them have a really large return in terms of the improvement in their own processes and outcomes. So the part of Elsevier that I lead supports corporates who are doing research and development. So the tools that we're supplying to them and the data that we're supplying to them are going to help them be more successful in their research and development, have more chance of success. They're going to help them to get there faster, and they're going to help their researchers to be more efficient. And I think companies that are able to recognize those benefits are more willing then to invest in data solutions, in data products, and not just see it as, here's an interesting piece of information that's a cost. No, this is critical data that helps us to be able to unlock real value.
This episode was brought to you by Be Digital. Be Digital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. Be Digital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation, and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, Be Digital have just developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy in 2024 and beyond. Go to bedigitaluk.com to find out more and get in touch. So tell us how AI is going to change how you guys operate then, and the value you can offer your customers. What kind of stuff are you? I understand you're working on a few new products and services at the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me take a step back and maybe just give a little bit of picture of the sort of things our customers do today, and then how AI will help them and our products will help them. So For those people who are working in research and development, a researcher, our tools today support them across the whole research and development lifecycle, all the way from ideation, idea generation, where shall I invest my time in terms of new research, all the way through to post-launch monitoring of maybe it's drugs, safety, and sort of things that they need to monitor post-launch. But if I take the first bit, the idea generation, that is an enormous amount of time that is spent on that. And it's an incredibly valuable step, actually, both in academia, but also in corporate, because no researcher, science doesn't stand on its own. A piece of scientific research doesn't stand on its own. I think it was Isaac Newton who said that scientists stand on the shoulders of giants. Everything is built on the research that came before it. And so for a researcher, before they start looking at where am I going to go, they need to know what research has already been done. So there's a lot of work that goes into scanning the scientific literature, peer-reviewed literature, to identify what has been done in a particular field, what hasn't been done, what experiments have already been done, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And researchers will spend an enormous amount of time scanning that literature. And that literature base is growing significantly each year. So each year there are millions of new scientific articles that are published. And so researchers work in this sort of sea of information, trying to sift through it to find a sweet spot for where they're going to invest their time to make a new discovery. So that's today we can sell them databases and content sets, but they're still having to do that search and discovery. What we've been investing in is applying AI to those content sets to really speed up the work of the researcher. So let me make that real. Instead of a normal search, if I can call it that, of the literature and getting a long list of hundreds of articles, we're able to do that with natural language search to find a much more finely tuned set of articles that actually answer the question, not just the topic name or what have you, answer the question,
keywords,
summarize those articles, and then to do some really cool stuff, like take those articles and actually provide a comparison of the experiments that are actually documented in those articles, which is actually a piece of work. Talking to researchers, they can spend weeks and months doing themselves by hand today, and actually we can get that done for them in a matter of minutes. So that's a tool called Science Direct AI. And we believe that's going to make a real difference to scientists, both in academia, but in corporate, in terms of making them a lot more efficient and speeding them up. Because for corporates, they've got incredible, valuable resource there with researchers with enormous brains, enormous capability, but they want them to be doing that brain work and not just busy work. And today, research is doing a lot of that busy work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So today, Science Direct is our database of all of our content articles, scientific articles, and Science Direct AI is now the newly powered AI product. And we've similarly taken each of our products today and added AI functionality to them over the last year and launched them. So we have a product called Scopus AI, which scans not just our articles, but the whole world of science. And then we have specialist tools in life sciences, where we've recently released a tool called Embase AI, which is more specifically focused on literature in the life sciences domain, which is quite pertinent for pharma companies in corporate world.
Yeah, sure. So these products then, are they based on your own large language model that you've trained then, or are they plugged into models like Claude or whatever, or if you built it all yourself?
No, we're not a builder of large language models. So we're very clear. We license the large language models, but what we do is build the technology of how to apply the large language model to our content to get a better answer. Because today, a large language model standing alone is what it is. It's a language model. It's not necessarily a truth model. And actually, we believe that the level of trust that someone can put in a product and a service goes up a lot more if they understand the content set that it's being applied to. So we're using our own technology, combining the language model, our existing databases, our content, to be able to provide these results for the researchers.
Sure. So in terms of the output then that your customers are getting from these products, how are you sort of making sure that they're providing the right information to your customers? Do you know what I mean? How do you regulate that so that it's being cross-checked and it's not hallucinating like what we see ChatGPT doing quite a lot? What measures do you have in place to ensure that it's providing the right output?
So there's a few things. So number one is, I would say, with the language model, applying a language model, you can never be 100% sure that there's no hallucination.
Of course.
But what we can say is that the way that we apply it really reduces the risk of that. So we use what we call RAG technology to actually look at the content that we have, to search it, to return, using the natural language search, the right content sets, and then to summarize just those content sets. So it's not asking the large language model to go away and answer the question. The large language model is interpreting the question from the user. It's then searching for the right content. Once it's got the right content, it's then summarizing that content. And it's making available at all stages a link to that content so that the researcher themselves can check back and make sure that what they're getting is backed up by a scientific article. And of course, they can then click through to that and find that in the database as well. I mean, this is a really important question. And as we look forward, I do think trust is a really important part of the journey when it comes to AI.
Absolutely.
And I think the ability to have tools that people can trust are going to be incredibly important. We've built over a number of years our own responsible AI principles at RELX, because before generative AI, we were using machine learning or extractive AI as well in different contexts to extract knowledge from documents and for some of our products. And so as part of that, we'd already built a 5-point set of principles. They're things like making sure that there's always a human in the loop, making sure that we understand the real world impacts of AI, making sure that we're responsible when it comes to privacy and data governance, those sort of things. And those are well embedded in us as an organization. I think they stand us in good stead, as well as the way that we apply the technology in terms of the trust in the answer.
Yeah. Are you seeing sort of clear results now that your customers are getting in terms of accelerating the R&D process then? Because these products, these tools, have not been around for that long. I'm talking like sort of from hypothesis generation through to experimentation or discovery or whatever. Are your customers saying to you, wow, we're doing things, what would take us 3 years is now taking us a year or maybe 6 months? Have you got any case studies that, or anything that's shocked you in the last couple of years, Stuart?
I wouldn't say shocked me. I think each stage of adding technology has sped up processes, right? And this is just another one of those steps. And I'm not at all surprised to see the productivity gains that we are seeing. So you're right to say we've only put these AI tools in the hands of our customers over the last few months. If you take something like a drug discovery process, that's a matter of months and years. So we can't look back and say, well, we've helped a company get a drug to market that much more quickly. But what we can say and what we can see is the impact on an individual researcher's workload and efficiency. And for them, they're telling us things like, it saved me 30% of my time, 50% of my time, so that I can focus on different things and get on with the next stage of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite exciting though, isn't it? That, these things, I mean, some of this is certainly around drugs discovery and anything in the sort of medical field. These tools are going to surely cultivate so much more innovation because so much is going to be covered by automation now. What are you most excited about in that domain within the pharmaceutical industry, for instance, Stuart? What stands out for you as being very exciting right now?
Yeah, I think it is that ability to make the process more efficient. I think for pharmaceutical companies over the last few years, there's been a real recognition of the enormous cost and enormous time it takes to actually get a drug to market. And that's created challenges. And some companies have retrenched to some extent in terms of R&D efforts or really focused on efficiency. And of course, the danger with that is that maybe there are less drugs that will come to market, whereas actually these tools enable people to be able to get the throughput, actually continue to potentially accelerate the drug discovery process to make more discoveries, potentially, but while enabling the company to stay efficient. So I believe there's sort of real ROI for these companies. But it's not just in pharma. Yeah. I think the opportunity for discovery is incredibly important in lots of domains. Obviously, healthcare is a really important one. But if we think about the challenges that we face, sustainability is another one. Helping manufacturing, chemicals companies and others find sustainable alternatives to certain materials is another piece where there's a lot of investment going and we need to find solutions quite quickly, helping speed up some of the discovery around clean energy, clean technologies, etc. as well. And I genuinely believe that tools like the ones that we're producing will enable those real world outcomes to be accelerated.
Fantastic. So I wanted to ask you about, I mentioned it earlier on, but I think this is a good segue into the relationship between, certainly in terms of R&D, human researchers and AI tools evolving. Okay. Will it be a case of augmentation as it appears to be right now, or replacement eventually? Are we going to reach that crossroads at some point? What is your view? Why do we need human researchers when we've got all these incredible tools to it?
There's a few reasons today why we need them. Number one, I think, is creativity. I think AI tools and other tools can help stimulate creativity, but in the end, they're always very much grounded in what has happened before, what the model has been trained on. And I think humans do have a propensity to be able to think beyond and think differently. On the other hand, AI tools can help that happen more quickly. So as you rightly say, it's a partnership between the tool and the human that I think can really advance knowledge and discovery. I think to the point that you made earlier, hallucinations are a challenge. And at the moment, I think there's a big question of whether hallucinations can ever be completely eliminated. And while that's a question, there needs to be some checks and balances and humans in the loop at certain points to make sure that we're able to rely on what is happening there. So I do see these things as absolutely humans and AI working together to be able to make these discoveries at speed.
What about on a more broader level? Do you have concerns about AI replacing jobs generally on a societal level? Do you think all through history from maybe the time of the Luddites through to every other innovation that we've seen from the Industrial Revolution onwards. Certainly, we've normally seen an immediate impact on jobs and then a recovery and generally a net gain in jobs with every innovation. Do you think that's the same here, Stuart, or is this different?
I don't have a crystal ball. My instinct is it's the same. I mean, it is quite a significant change, but then I think each of the technology steps that we've seen over history have had quite profound impacts at the time. But humans are relentlessly creative and actually able to free themselves up to be able to do other slightly more interesting things. And I'm an optimist on this in terms of the role of humans that I don't see being replaced by AI certainly in the near to the medium term. Having said that, it will absolutely take away some of the busy work that we all do, and that's to the good.
Yeah.
But we can invest that in things that today machines can't do.
Do you see any particular industries that you think are going to be massively impacted by generative AI and AI agents? Any industries stand out for you as being particularly impacted? Pharmaceuticals is probably one, isn't it? We've already covered that.
Yeah, we've touched on that one already. I'm not sure if it's industries versus roles, if I can put it like that. So it's role types. So it is that basic text. I mean, in the end, what is a large language model and what is generative AI? It is that ability to be able to create some level of content. And today there's a lot of content creation that goes on in different functions that actually can be sped up enormously by that. So to the extent that there's some level of content creation, it will impact it. But that doesn't necessarily mean the roles go away, but clearly the value will be the value that's added on top of the potential starting point. So whether it's drafting a letter or drafting some comms or marketing or whatever it might be, I think AI can take away some of the busy work, but the function still has real value to add in terms of the insight, maybe the emotional connection that then that content has with its audience, which the machine can't add.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just going back to safety and stuff, I'm just wanted to ask about governance, because obviously you obviously engage and speak to IT leaders, technology leaders, business leaders generally. Do you ever get asked, or do you ever provide advice on what governance to have in place in terms of AI adoption across the organization? What are your thoughts on AI governance in sort of typical enterprise organizations, Stuart?
Yeah, I think it does come back to the sort of having some principles that you can apply. I mentioned that earlier, but having some level of responsible AI principles as an organization that everybody knows, everybody understands, and that actually everything is measured against is really important. And having somebody who is independent and responsible for making sure that is followed through and lived out in an organization is really important. That's the approach that we've taken. I think many larger corporations have taken a similar view. It's probably more challenging in a startup environment, but it's important to have those, to understand where the boundaries are and to set them before you start work rather than making it up on the fly.
So AI aside, what kind of stuff are you guys, well, I suppose it's all to do with AI in your world, isn't it? But what kind of stuff are you guys working on right now then? And where's the growth for the Elsevier Group at the moment?
Well, I'm going to focus a little bit on the part that I'm responsible for, which is looking after corporate customers specifically. And when I talk to the customers, everybody is absolutely grappling with, we want to use AI. We're still working out how do we do it in a way that really adds value to my organization. And some people want a tool that's out of the box. And of course, as I've just described, we've got tools like Science Direct AI, Scopus AI, Embase AI, which we can sell to them. Their researchers can have them immediately. But there are also customers who are building their own AI capability. They've got a lot of sophistication themselves. They're building knowledge bases. They're building models themselves. And again, we can help them and partner with them because we can provide feeds of our data, because actually in the end, high quality data is what's going to differentiate good decisions from bad decisions, good knowledge bases from bad knowledge bases. And so we can provide with them our data sets through APIs and then services and tools on top of that to partner with them. So there's a fork there in terms of where customers are going. And then if I think about the tools, today what we've built is really upping the effectiveness of tools that exist today, but AI powered. I think over time, we're going to become even more user focused and not just making an individual tool better, starting from the user and saying, how do we join up some of these pieces? How do we integrate these pieces to improve our solutions for a user so that they're not having to think, oh, I've got to go to this tool or that tool. I just need to go one place that's going to help me. And agentic AI will play a role in helping that because it will be able to interpret the user's question and go to the right place for it. So I think as a technology that will help. But I'm quite excited because, again, I think that will provide another step in terms of efficiency, productivity, and ultimately real-world outcomes for some of these companies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's really interesting. So yeah, look, I just wanted to maybe take it back to in terms of yourself then and your own sort of, you're obviously the president of corporate markets at the moment. Where do you sort of go from there then in terms of your own career then, Stuart? Which direction do you want to take your career in? Are you happy in that domain, or do you have aspirations to move forward into a more senior role within the group?
That's a great question. I've never set myself goals, actually, when it comes to career. I think it's incredibly important to enjoy the journey. So over the years, I've gone through lots of different roles. I think, as I mentioned, I started out in accounting. I was in finance. I was CFO, chief commercial officer. Now this role in corporate markets. And for me, what's important, I really value learning, continuing to develop as an individual, adding value to an organization, and actually genuinely have never really focused on a particular endpoint versus actually continue to learn. And being involved in this world of AI is an amazing place to learn at the moment. You know, I think we're all learning on the job every day how we can use this technology better for our customers.
I'm really disappointed now. I thought you were going to say I'm going to become a sports journalist, but maybe don't give up on that dream. You never know. Maybe one day.
Maybe.
So looking back now, in your armchair, and I'm sure you've got a long way to go, Stuart, but if you could speak to your 21-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to that guy?
Yeah, a couple of things I just touched on, I think. One is make sure you enjoy the journey. I think there have been moments when I've sort of taken my eye off that slightly and said, oh, well, next year I'll do X or what have you. I think the destination is never quite what you think it's going to be. So it's so important to enjoy the journey. I think there's a piece around making sure you keep learning, which I feel like I have done. But I think the thing probably I sometimes got knocked aside from early on in my career was just being comfortable in who I am. I think we always have a propensity to think of the things that we don't know. We look at other people and say they can do X and I can't do that. And of course, it's great to be humble and learn from others and pick up new skills from other people. But it's also just making sure that you're comfortable in the value and who you are and doing that. Yeah. And I feel that's something that I probably learned partway through my career to be properly comfortable in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you get that balance right, then you know everything else sort of falls into place, really, doesn't it? I suppose. But so how do you look? Obviously, you're in a very senior role within a massive organization. You've obviously lots to do, loads of responsibility and pressure. How do you achieve balance in your life, then, Stuart? How do you ensure that you switch off and give yourself that balance in your professional and personal life?
So actually, it's a great question because it's something I really believe in strongly, which is to be the best you can be at something, you need to also be able to look after yourself. You need to take time for rest. I'm someone who, whatever I'm going to do it 100%. I'm not very good at doing something at 60 or 70%. But if you're going to give 100% all the time, you need to have a time when you're going to have a rest. And that means good sleep. It means turning off sometimes. Everyone's got different rhythms. Maybe it's the weekend, maybe it's evenings, maybe whatever it is. But I think there is an important part of rest in that. And that's really important. And then the other thing that's super personal to me, but I think helps me be grounded, is also my faith is very important to me. And I think that grounds me in some level in terms of my own personal values and be able to put things into perspective perspective as well in the leadership role.
And I noticed a lovely piano in the background as well. So I'm sure that passes the time for you as well as the musical stuff we talked about before. But I always ask a guest to give us a book recommendation. However, if you're not much of a reader, it can be another type, a piece of content or anything else that you have been inspired by recently.
Yeah, I mean, in this organization, you meet and you learn from and you see the work of incredibly inspiring people on a regular basis. So through the Elsevier Foundation, we run a Chemistry for Climate Action prize. And the people who enter that are just incredibly inspiring people. So the winners back in 2024, we had a Mongolian researcher who was using volcanic rocks to clean water. We had a Colombian researcher who was using fungi to transform industrial waste into better, clean biomaterials that could be used in a different context. And seeing and hearing stories of just the human creativity and the resourcefulness that people from different backgrounds have to solve real world problems, I find that incredibly inspiring.
That's fantastic. Is that likely to be open again in the future?
Yeah, I can give you a link. And we run that prize each year. So there will be a 2026 prize, and the instructions are somewhere on the Elsevier Foundation website.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that as well. That's really good. That's very different, but I think equally as pertinent. That's fantastic. But thank you so much for talking to us, Stuart. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people find out what you were doing? Are you active on any of the social media channels? Where can people connect with you and link in with you or whatever? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can obviously find that through LinkedIn or through Elsevier.com. And you can find out more about products and services. And then you can also see our leadership team. And I think there's links to my LinkedIn as well through the leadership pages there.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate you're a very busy chap. So we do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and thank you for being candid and speaking about your views and things. It's given us a lot to think about. So yeah, thank you for being on the Tech Leaders Podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for your time.
So there's a lot to unpack from this conversation, and there's a lot of things I could draw attention to as always. But I think as I sort of said at the beginning, I think what I would like to draw attention to was the quiet, profound transformation going on in the way research and development is conducted, especially within life sciences. What I mean is for an organization like RELX Group, which sits at the intersection of data, analytics, and regulated industries like healthcare, pharma, science, etc., these AI-driven advancements aren't just incremental. They're more than that. They're reshaping the entire timeline of innovation. So the ability to reduce friction in the drug discovery process from initial hypothesis through to experimentation, through to regulatory submission, which is a big part of it, this has real world implications. It means potentially life-saving treatments reaching people far faster and potentially backed by more rigorous data and decision-making as well. So this is very, very this is going to change a lot. This is going to affect a lot of people's lives positively. You'd think so anyway, wouldn't you? And that is very exciting. And I think Stuart talking through that process and obviously alluding to already seeing results. Imagine what this is going to be in 10 years. This is a very exciting time. And I just thought that was a very important part of the conversation that I want to draw attention to. But look, thank you as always for listening. And I just wanted to say as well, we've got some incredible guests coming up in the second half of this year. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with a colleague, or leave us a quick review. That would be very much appreciated. It really helps us to keep the conversation going. So until next time, thank you so much for joining us. This episode was brought to you by Be Digital. Be Digital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. Be Digital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, Be Digital have developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy in 2024 and beyond. Go to Be Digital UK to find out more and get in touch.